Good morning, everyone. Obviously, this is the first time that we've ever been forced to present a national conference in this way, and I hope it's going to be successful. Hopefully, we'll get quite a few participants. I'm not going to say very much, but I would like to just make a point that Julian asked me to mention today. Earlier this year, sadly, we lost a member of the Guild who has been a very active member for most of his life. I did manage to get along to his funeral, but Andy Glenn sadly passed away at the beginning of March this year. And I think probably his was the last funeral that was carried out under normal circumstances without shutdown. I'm sure that everybody who is a member of the Guild would remember Andy and the work that he did. And I'd just, as Julian suggested, like to hold a minute's silence just so that we can show our respect for a past member. Thank you. We have quite a detailed program today. I hope everybody enjoys the day. Just like to now hand over to Kevin Harrell, the president of the Guild, for his introduction.
Everybody, I'd like to thank you for attending this. I hope you go away with something from this today. We are in unusual times, and as Tony said, we've never done this before, and hopefully that we never come across these times again. I'd just like to, for the support that they've given us, the PDA, the NOCN, Wienerberger, the mortar industry, and many more suppliers who help us through our competitions that we hold regionally every year, but sadly we didn't hold them last year. But we're trying to come up with a format that we can hold competitions this year and through to next year. Whether it will work, we don't know. We're just going to have to test times, and hopefully we get through them all together at the other end. That's all I've got to say. So just enjoy the day, and I hope you take something from it. Thank you for joining.
Right, the first presenter is Chris Carter from NOCN.
And again, so this is what we've got this morning, and I'm just going to talk you through a few bits and pieces. So a bit about NOCN and what's happening with us, a few words on the current apprenticeship standard and EPAs, a little bit on training qualifications and updates to MVQs, something around our support materials, and also some talk about Site Right, and hopefully a little bit of time at the end for questions. So if you can move it forward one for me, please, Catherine. And again. So NOCN are obviously one of the largest awarding organisations in construction, and over the past few years we've branched out into a number of fields. We're doing great things with endpoint assessments, and we currently hold more endpoint assessments than any other organisation in the UK. We've taken on the CPCS card scheme, which is going pretty well. Can somebody mute potentially in the background for us, please? Sorry, I'm getting a lot of background noise. Is that all right? Thank you. And we've also launched our short course offer within the past 18 months, which is about providing CPD and standardized courses in areas which aren't necessarily covered by regulated qualifications. So if I talk about the bricklaying apprenticeship standards, just a few bits of information for you. We are delivering the bricklaying standard. We haven't delivered very many as yet. I think that's largely due to the issues we've had around COVID and also some problems with the practical assessment that I think everyone's been well aware of. The practical assessment has now been altered. It's now 12 hours over 2 days instead of just 1 day of 6 hours. And the reasoning behind that was that there was just too much to try and do in such a short period of time. So obviously IFA have been lobbied and they've agreed to extend the time for the practical assessment, which I think is really key and gives the learners and apprentices a much better chance of succeeding in their practical. And we'll work with you to deliver that. So I think it's useful for you to have that information. To give you a bit of an update around COVID, the practical assessment, there's no alternative to this, and it has to be done. The ITB and IFA are not giving us any flexibility to try and do anything different with the practical. However, we will work with you as a centre to ensure that social distancing is adhered to. One of the keys is that it might need to be a slightly smaller ratio of apprentices on the day in order to meet those requirements, but that's very much dependent on the space that you have within your centres to deliver these. But it's key that those practical assessments must go on face to face, and we still have endpoint assessors and our EQA team out and about doing visits to make sure that that can be done. We can offer you remotely invigilated knowledge assessments, and I'll come on to that. We've got a number of different ways of doing remote invigilation around the knowledge part of the assessment. So we can offer some flexibility there and support people to do that from home or from within your centre as required. And we can also do the same for any professional discussions. Obviously, a bit like this piece of equipment and Teams and Zoom, there are a number of ways now of us being able to do those professional discussions rather than making people travel in these very difficult times. It at least reduces some of the contact. If you want to know more about this, we have got a construction roadshow event coming up for endpoint assessments. That's on the 17th of November. Be hosted by Lisa Hibbard, who is our endpoint assessment business development manager. And if you'd like to sign up to that, that's available on our website. So if you go to NOCN and look under our news and events, you'll be able to find that and sign up to it. And it'll be similar to this. It's another virtual event. And we have a construction roadshow coming up in a fortnight as well. So what we're trying to do is get the information across to you as well as we can in these difficult times. The shame is I think we all enjoy doing our physical road shows and actually getting the proper chance to meet people and talk to people, but we're not getting that at the moment. So we still want to make sure you're fully updated and given all of the information that you need there. If you want to click forward, Catherine. So a little bit about regulated qualifications, and I thought it's worth starting with the information about remote invigilation and the different ways that we can do that. So for high-risk qualifications, we can do third-party remote invigilator. I don't think we'll need to do that for brick and endpoint in those areas. We can also offer retrospective remote invigilation where we look at recordings after they've been taken. And actually we can do proctored remote invigilation with people at the centre. And by that, I mean that we have systems that we can work with whereby we are overseeing the invigilation of any test or exam that's been done, either via camera or via different methods of using the software to cover those areas. So if you need that service, we can provide it. Please contact Customers Ops or your EQA or your business development manager, and they will talk you through the process and make those arrangements with you. We appreciate that these are really difficult times, so we've tried to use technology in place that will cover this area and make sure that the learners are looked after as well as everybody else. Next slide, please, Catherine. So little bit on updates to the MVQ. So the level 3, just to make you aware, there've been some unit changes within the MVQ. There is increased GLH, and there's a new unit on installing and forming specialist masonry elements in the workplace. And what that's done is essentially meant that some of the units have been removed as they've been wrapped up into that new unit. So it's worth being aware if you're starting to register people on MVQs, going forward, that those changes will need to be put in place. Your portfolios will need to be updated, as well as your content and plans. So that's the changes to level 3. One more, Catherine. And on the level 2, similar situation. So there are changes to the units. The GLH has increased, which is good news. Hopefully that will be reflected in the funding. Again, the new unit there, and there has been some removal of other units that you will no longer need to assess, but you will need to assess that alternative unit. So I think it's probably the biggest change we've seen in trowel occupations for a while. The reality and what you're assessing is that it won't change hugely, but the way it's structured is there. So please go online, pull down those new outcomes and assessment criteria, and make sure that your delivery reflects that, and any assessment that you do reflects the new MVQs for people that you are putting them on. Obviously, the slides hopefully will be available to you after this. You can see the numbers there to check against. Next slide, please, Catherine. If you want to just click all of these up, I think there's 3. So from a resource and support material point of view, we have added some resource materials. I think we've tried to reflect the change in times and the needs that people have, as well as to make more things available for the learner and for the tutor in the way that they want to be learning. So we've offered improved tutor guidance, so that gives you more detail around stretch and challenge and the scope of training. We've created a whole series of trade support videos with the assistance of Christian Hatherall-Good, who I'm sure you all know very well, and Christian stars in the bricklaying videos along with some of his learners. These are really great. What we're trying to do is give bite-sized videos on how-tos. So it'll include areas like tools and setting out and those kind of areas, and those are all available via our YouTube channel. And what that allows the learner to do is revisit those either on their phone if they're struggling during a practical session, or at home, or they can be obviously put up on a screen by the tutor to roll through so that they can see these different areas and how-to guides. I think they're really good. They're put together by genuine practitioners. They're using current methods, current learners, and we've covered a whole range of subjects there. So we've got 7 for bricklaying, we've got 12 in carpentry and joinery, 15 in P&D, and 9 in plastering. And we'll look to add to those over a period of time when we can get back out in the film, of course. You know, we sent our film crew out to do this, and they've edited and done a really good job. We're a bit limited about how much time we can spend in people's centres due to social distancing, but we'll look to add to those in the future. But please, you know, if you're an NOCN centre, they're free of charge to you. Please make use of them. And finally, we've really increased our support material downloads. So there are additional tutor guides for the entry level and level 1. We've put additional learner assessments, more mock question papers, lots of sample practical assignments, and assessment booklets at level 1 and 2, and some live practical papers that you can pull down. All of those are on the My NOCN section of our website, which is available to all of our centres. They're all, again, available free of charge as long as you are approved to offer the qual and you're an NOCN centre. So we'd hope that people will pick them up and use them. I think, you know, they're relevant to current styles of learning, they're relevant to current learners, and we will again look to add to those, and I'd certainly welcome any feedback on them. So if there are things that you'd like to change, more that you'd like to see, please let us know. What we're doing at the moment as well is trying to pull those together to put those into a learning platform that you could do the whole qualification from sort of as remotely as possible as needed. And they're all obviously very useful for virtual lessons and remote learning. Thank you. Next slide, please. I'll go through this relatively quickly, but I think it's relevant to most people in that functional skills is still a key part of any apprenticeship that people are doing, they need to do. Just a reminder really that the legacy functional skills have been phased out. Hopefully you've put all of your learners that you could do through the legacy ones already, because the last date was the 31st, and all of those need to be certified by the end of this year. And at that point, the old functional skills qualifications will be over. So we're just in the sort of the death throes, so to speak, of the last of the functional skills. Next slide, please, Catherine. And just a little bit on the reformed functional skills. So just a reminder, so there's changes to qualification. You must cover all the new requirements, and we can support you to do that. Obviously, what the aim is to bring the functional skills up to a level of a GCSE level. And you can see the changes for maths. So there are different sort of non-calculator and calculator sections. I think that feels a shame. Certainly if I were trying to do them these days without a calculator, that might be a challenge. And there's pure maths and problem solving. And obviously within English, there's a need to make use of a dictionary and also to engage with organisational features and language styles. And those are all included within the new functional skills. Next slide. Excellent. So if I can bring you onto SiteRight, which has largely been my project working with NOCN over the past few years. I think what we've noticed within the construction industry certainly is that we have quite good controls over qualifications and apprenticeships, and those things have been regulated for a very long time, and the standards are very similar. Excuse me. Where we've seen lots of differences, unfortunately, is around the standard of non-regulated training. And I think if you look at something like abrasive wheels, for example, there are different levels of training that are done. There are some that are purely online, which I wouldn't recommend, simply because if you've never picked up and used a tool, how can you say that you are trained and competent to use it? So we've introduced a number of courses already, and the idea is to improve the standard of on-site training and reduce those risks and make people safer. Every course is standardized and certified, and it doesn't matter if you've done the course in Land's End or John O'Groats or London or Manchester, because we provide the content, the assessment, any of the practical details and the lesson plans. It means that everybody will do the same standard of course, and hopefully what that leads to is more transferability. We know that learners are doing repeat training, so if you move from one job to another, the chances are that you do half the courses that you did at your previous job again. And what we're trying to do is get away from that and give somebody a certificate that as they move from employer to employer, the certificate goes with them and people understand that they don't need to repeat that training, which should reduce costs and also improve the quality and the standardization. As I say, all the training resources are provided to centres, so there's no need to develop your own. They're effectively a course in a box. And what we do is obviously we regularly evaluate and improve those courses. They're built by us, but they're built in partnership with manufacturers, associations, federations to make sure that they're relevant. And that's really, really important to us. We wanted to make sure that it's employers and the manufacturers that are generating the majority of the content of these courses to ensure that they're relevant to industry. They know better than anybody else what the needs are on site for these things. So, for example, we've partnered with the Lead AP group in a load of lifting courses, which is a group of the largest contractors in the country. We've partnered with Leica on a Cat and Jenny course. And if I move on to the next slide around cut-off saws, we've partnered with Still. Now, many of you will know this course. It's used to be known as PDCOS back in the days of CITB. We've taken that course over from CITB and we're running it now. We've redeveloped all of the content with Still and with Andy Fitzmaurice, who I'm sure most of you know from the events, because he's been very good at supporting the Guild of Bricklayers at these events to do a lot of the cutting for you and to demonstrate the equipment. There is a requirement within the new bricklaying standard that people understand the use of this type of equipment, and this course is very suitable to meet the requirements of Brickwork Apprenticeship and Gateway. The trainer has been significantly reduced in price since we've taken it over, and we've negotiated with Still, who have very generously provided additional support to Andy and ourselves in order to offer the train the trainer at really what is a quite substantially subsidised rate of £350 for 2 days. The cert for the course is £25, and there is CITB grant available for that, which I think is really key. Well, actually, you've got apprentices who are employed, they can pick this up and the employer can draw down grant. And it's also very suitable for experienced workers as a course that you can run out of your centres. There's a really strong requirement for this. And I think what we've put together is the right course for industry and the right course for transferability. So I'd highly recommend that you get in touch with about that, and we can point you in the right direction to talk to Andy about doing the train the trainer, or to get you set up as a centre if you've already done the train the trainer. We know there are a large number of people that have already been through the process who weren't using the CITB certificate for whatever reason. If you're an existing NOCN centre and you've got the appropriate training facilities and the trainer, we will provide you with approval on this free of charge, and it's usually via desktop process. There's not additional visits for these courses if you can provide the evidence that you're capable of doing them. Okay, thanks, Catherine. So to become a Site Right Centre, it's a relatively simple process. All of the course specifications are on our website. Please check those and make sure you can meet the criteria. As I say, some courses may require you to do train the trainer, and one of those is obviously the cut-off saw. The other one that we have that requires a train the trainer is the underground detection course that we've developed with Leica. They require a train the trainer. However, what we've managed to get from Leica, which is really, really good, is their course is £1,400 for train the trainer, but actually that will include a full set of the equipment. And the equipment itself retails at over £1,700. So actually it's a significant reduction on the price. If you then contact us, the team will run through filling the paperwork in with you. Onboarding will then go through the process to check you meet the requirements. What they normally do is check with the EQA to make sure that the centre has a clean bill of health. And then we move forward to a desktop approval. And after that, we will go through any systems training that you require. So we'll contact you as individuals. We've got a trainer who will talk through any systems requirements and any systems training that you need to make sure that this is really easy for you to deliver from day one. And then you can pull down the resources and crack on. So it's a pretty straightforward and quick process. And we've been turning these applications around in about a week if you need to do that. Thanks, Catherine. This isn't directly brick related, so but I wanted to throw it in anyway, because under these times, we know that there's lots of people, sadly, being made unemployed, an awful lot of people that are going to need to retrain, and the government has put a lot of funding out there in order to try and get people back into work. So we've developed an online program that is ideal for getting people into work, and that's our Pathways to Construction. It's 2 parts really. So it includes our health and safety awareness in construction, which is an alternative to the Level 1 award in health and safety. Is effectively a 1-day course, but we also have a blended learning version of this, which is approved for the green card, and the program includes the training for that course. And it also includes a whole series of short introduction awareness courses. Now, these are not to replace full training for the equipment, for the areas that would be needed. They are designed to give people who are completely new to the industry an understanding of what the requirements they're going to face on site are and what the sort of things they can expect to see. And again, that's all online, and they're all self-contained lessons. So they've got presentations, videos, we've got narratives, and there is formative assessment throughout the program. If you'd like to click on, Catherine, hopefully there's a slide showing what the contents are. So there's some types of questions that we've got here, and identify hazards. There's different ways that people can answer the questions. So we tried not to make it a typical A, B, C, D. This is the way that you answer the questions. What we've done is include this as formative assessment throughout, so that people can continually check their knowledge and make sure that they're following it. I know that online learning can be challenging for a lot of people. There have always been arguments in the past, I think, that people don't learn in the same way, that they don't retain information in the same way. So what we've tried to do is make sure that formative assessment embeds this knowledge as they go along. It's not just a case of you watching a presentation and then doing a test at the end and forgetting about it. You'll be sort of tested throughout. I think there's probably several here, Catherine, so if you want to whiz through them. And I won't go through them all, but you can see there's a whole host of areas that's included in this course. And the idea is to get somebody sort of work prepared. So they've got an understanding of fire safety and first aid and manual handling. These do not replace formal courses in these areas. What they do is provide them with an awareness. So an introduction and awareness to asbestos is not an asbestos awareness certificate. What it is making candidates aware of the dangers and issues involved and the controls around it. And that's the same in all of these areas. But what it does do is give them the health and safety knowledge to be safe on their first day on site, and an awareness of the fact that this is the additional training that you're going to have to do and the things that you're going to have to bear in mind when you work on a construction site. And I think that's, you know, it covers most of the basic areas there, so that somebody on day one can be useful to the employer on site and increase their prospects of getting employed. Excuse me. Next slide, please. And finally, to wrap up, I wanted to sort of make you aware that we've put together some career maps, and these are all available to our NOCN centres. And the idea behind them is that it's a sort of graphical representation of the different paths that people might look to take during their construction career, and sort of the dizzy heights that they can perhaps hope to achieve. I think that's the other thing. It's really important that learners can understand that their career will progress, as yours and mine have whilst we've worked in the industry, and where you look to move on to. So we've put together a whole series of these that are available to you. We welcome you downloading them, and then please ask us for them if you'd like them. But I think that it gives a really good idea of and mapping a career path. Now that will look a bit small on your screen, so if you click forward one, Catherine, I think it might have a bit of a zoom. You can see the areas there that people can move on to, whether or not they go into self-employment, into master craftsperson, or they might look to become a plant operator. But what it does is it shows you the fact that there isn't just one career path for people in construction. They can move on to lots of different levels, and it shows the additional training that they might need to do that and those next steps. So I think it makes it nice and clear. So please download these, use them. They do print in quite large format if you wanted them to do so. I think the original plan for these is that we're actually going to cover a wall with them, but that's been slowed up due to the joys of COVID. But I think they're quite useful documents there. If you want to go one more, please, Catherine. And as you can see, we've done one for plants as well. Not necessarily super relevant for everybody in this room today, but obviously, as you know, we control the CPCS plant scheme as well. So we wanted to show the various routes there. Again, you know, it's not just about being an operative. There are routes to site manager, to QS. There's lots of different options for people within the industry. And I think it's that's not necessarily as understood as it should be. I've probably gone through that more quickly than I'd hoped to, which is the nature of online presentations. I think it's difficult to judge the pace a little bit. But if anybody's got any questions now, I think we've got a little bit of time to answer them, hopefully, Terry. And if that's all right, I'm obviously around all day as well. But that's my email if anybody wants to get in touch, or has anybody got any questions now? I think if they want to throw in the chat box.
Chris, just on what you said about the cut-off saw, I've done the course with Andy to him, and from a guild perspective, it was a good intensive course, and I think it's well worth the money. And looking on to the future, if that's brought into site, it will be beneficial for people to do it.
Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, I think anything that we do with these courses, you know, from a personal and business, we want to increase the quality out there, you know, and if it makes people safer and they're capable of using that equipment properly, that'd be really good. And I've been on some very large sites where you see some very bad habits with cut-off saws, and I've also seen an awful lot of the health and safety advisories which shows the results of people not using it correctly, and it's horrific. You know, they're life changing if you get it wrong. So, yeah, thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any questions? Just send an email and we can read them out to Chris for you to answer, so he can answer.
Yeah, anything through the chat box at all?
Yes.
That's it. Unless I've stunned people into submission, of course. I mean, obviously, if there's nothing today, but anybody wants to ask me questions after the event, just say my email is there. I'm happy to talk through with people. Something just popped up.
Ah, yes. Can you see that, Chris?
No, I can't. No,
Okay, hi, Chris. Where can we download the progression chart from that you've just displayed? And that's from Jack.
That's from Jack. So if you contact, I think it's on the website, but if not, if you contact me, I'll send it across to you.
It's on the website, and I can send everyone a link to it when I send the recording and the slides later this week, if that's okay.
Thanks, Catherine. That'd be great.
Thank you.
No worries.
So Ian is going to represent Jason today, who's unfortunately not well. So he will do the presentation. So over to you, Ian.
Yeah, thank you. Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yeah, can hear you perfectly.
Perfectly.
Just let me know if you need me to move on to another slide.
Will do, look, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, may I take this opportunity to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for allowing Sitting Girls the opportunity to present in front of you today. Unfortunately, and it is unfortunately due to illness, Jason can't be with you today, hence the reason I'm presenting on his behalf. During the following presentation, I will be covering the following. I'll be touching on the Bricklayer Apprenticeship. I'll be covering Qualification in Wales Update, Bright People and Update, T-Levels Update, Mitigation and Technical Qualifications, the Ministry of Justice, and then providing you with a general update as we're moving forward. Thank you. Next slide, please. The global pandemic brought sudden change, and we all know that, to vocational learning. Moving it online to support remote working is what we've been closely working on. Like everyone, has helped us realise the potential of educational technology to make learning more engaging and accessible. Dispensations are in place to support learners with the knowledge tests during the pandemic. Having said that, we are returning to face-to-face assessments while making sure our customers understand how to be COVID safe. We are asking you to stay up to date with the support we provide, and you will locate by clicking on the tab, which is on our website. This is all about making sure people are safe as we're working through this. Thank you. Next slide. What I would like to do is begin by providing an update on our EPA. As you're aware, it outlines the level, the duration that it takes, the maximum funding band, and we have a number of webinars scheduled, and our next one is running on the 17th of November to go through in depth the City and Guilds offer and support that we will provide you through this to ensure that you're comfortable in what you're going to be doing and delivering, and the support we provide you with. Thank you. Next slide. Here we can see a brief on programme assessment approach and assessment through to assessment gateway onto end-to-end point assessment. On programme, it's generic technical knowledge, which also identifies off-the-job training, the English and maths attained at level 1, which are going to be taken at level 2, the application of skills, knowledges and behaviours, guidance on off-the-job training and assessment, and the developing of 15 pieces of evidence portfolio for the oral questioning to support the oral questioning process. The assessment gateway, as we move forward, is to complete the portfolio of evidence, the English and maths, and the gateway sign-off process. It is expected that the learner completes Assessment Gateway within 3 months of the planned completion date. Regarding the EPA assessment, there is 3 assessment methods. There's 40 multiple choice questions, 60 minutes, and in one particular duration is a maximum of 30 candidates is the ratio. It was 6 hours, as we're now aware, it is now 12 hours over 2 days. And assesses and also includes a minimum of 5 oral questions, and it'll be a ratio of 1 to 6. And then the third one, which is the oral questioning, covering the knowledge, skills and behaviours, which will be 12 oral questions, and it'll be covered in the minimum, I should say, of the 12 oral questions covered in the 35 minutes, accordingly moving forward. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. In development for 2020, the Bricklaying, it's all about helping you to get started and moving that forward. So we have produced support and resources to help you through this particular process. We produced an endpoint assessment manual, assessment recording forms, provide and deploy a checklist to help you through that, access to networks, webinars and events, and also support for CPD, the continued professional development. And we're also included in that is apprenticeship training manuals, and we've got smart screen resources as well to help you through this process. In development, which we should have by early January, we'll have the centre pack, the smart screen tutor resources as a top-up, EPA resources, exemplar, sample tests, and what we call lead external independent point assessors reports, assessment reports. These are lead independent assessors that will be carrying it out and supporting independent endpoint assessors and providing reports accordingly to be able to move that forward. Next slide, please. This is a quote that we receive on regular, and it's just to provide an update, really. This is from a gentleman called Martin Price, who's the chair of CCATF, that just recognises Sitting Guilds as a market leader. And we all know that the brand is trusted by employers across the sector. Thank you. Next slide. We produced 10 good reasons why we should really work together. We fully understand that the process is new and stakeholders are still coming to terms on how this will work and at what stages will individual members of the team join and be part of this. We will provide the support from day one. We have a dedicated EPA team that can be there to support throughout the process. We've got written and audio examples show learner what good looks like. Access to webinars, events, and also to make sure that support is there for all apprentices. Support on assessment preparations for you and apprentices. Expert tutor online resources are available. We've got digital resources as well, enhanced digital resources that not just include digital learning, but also include short video clips as well. Lead independent endpoint assessor reports that will provide valuable insight into assessments and how these have been carried out and any discrepancies that's been identified. We're used to deliver at scale and stakeholders do value our brand. But what we'll also make sure is that they are robust quality systems and standards built with industry experts to meet industry needs. Next slide, please. We have what we call EPA partnership managers, and their role is to provide all stakeholders with the support throughout this process from start to finish. We have one in the Midlands, the North, and also for the Southwest that covers the entire England throughout that particular process. They're the contact details and the mobile numbers, and please don't hesitate to contact them if you need any additional support. We've also got a dedicated EPA support team that's on the phone. Just click on option 5 as you go through it. And we've also got a web chat as well to help you through this and provide any support and guidance that you may require. Thank you. Next slide, please. If you're not already aware, City and Guilds, in partnership with EAL, was the successful consortium to win the Qualification in Wales tender process. And for the last 2 years now, we've been developing and moving in earnest, ready to develop and ready to launch the full suite of new qualifications ready for Qualification in Wales. What we've had to do throughout this particular process is carry out face-to-face consultation with employers, associations, industry stakeholders and centres. Obviously, since March, we've had to do that through webinars and online surveys and to make sure we maintain that. Workshop sessions have been taking place on change communications with centres, and then feedback received from health and social to make sure that health and safety, make sure we get this right as we're moving it forward. Next slide, please. This is what we call the timelines and what we've got to meet to make sure we meet the relevant tender process. And what you will see is that where we're going to have a bank of resources available at the foundation, the progression and the apprenticeship qualification, because these are going to be different to what we've currently got in England and in Scotland and in Ireland, to be honest. We're also going to be supporting the centres through this approval process, but what's going to be crucial is the onboarding events that will be starting in earnest come January to help support Wales through this process and the change management. So what you'll have here is, you'll have the progression qualifications, followed then to support by the apprenticeship. Next slide, please. If we look at the structure, it all follows on from the GCSE and A levels, where it kicks in then on the foundation. The foundation in construction and built environment is for full-time learners. What apprenticeships will do is still cover majority of the content as what a foundation learner will do, and that is 6 mandatory core units along with the trade-specific unit that they're working towards. They will then move forward. If it's a full-time learner but not been successful in gaining employment, they will then continue on the progression qualification, which is in line with the occupational competency statements that's outlined by CITB and industry. There's also one in progression in building services. What happens then is, for an apprenticeship, it's either a 2-year apprenticeship or it's going to be a 3-year apprenticeship. But the outcome will be the same. It will be classed as a level 3 apprenticeship title, whichever pathway they've actually gone through it. What the difference is here is the methodology of the assessment. Whereas they'll complete various multiple choice questions, health and safety tests, but as a final year in their apprenticeship, they will do a work-based project rather than the endpoint assessment. That work-based project is plan, carry out and review is part of that process, and it covers the 80 guided learning hours throughout, but it's got to be carried out in the realistic working environment. Then to complete it will be a professional discussion, and that just provides you with a brief overview of where we are at that moment in time. We are on track to produce this in line with the framework that's outlined by Qualification in Wales. The webinars will begin in earnest in January, and they'll continue right through till June, till they're ready to start delivering in September 2021. All documentation, handbooks, qualification handbooks, learning resources, textbooks will all be in English and in the Welsh medium as well. Next slide, please. Moving on to tier levels and the milestones that we've actually got to meet at this moment. Again, I'm not sure if you're aware, but City and Guild, along with the AL again, was successful in winning the tier level bid. We commenced this in September of this particular year, and we've now started to gain momentum through this. And there's set milestones, like anything else, that we have to reach as we're working through this. Milestone 1 was for employers and providers to provide their specific input in the development and what's actually moving forward in accordance with that. Thankfully, we managed to complete that on time, and then it moved to the second one again, which is another milestone, which again included the employers and providers input as we move forward with that. The second milestone was the second draft of the input of the qualification structure and what this will look like for full-time learners. And now it will embed across to the apprenticeships to move that forward. And then milestone 3, which was successfully achieved by end of October, early November, to submit that, to be able to move that forward. If you require any more information on the tier levels, because I have no doubt some of you will be involved in the delivering these by 2021, please get in touch with us and we'll keep you well updated so you know exactly what's happening moving forward. Next slide, please. To support the events and what we're actually doing to drive this forward, we've got various events on the tier levels, as well as what we've got same in qualification in Wales. We start with the generic one to show structures, etc. This will include the agendas, which will include occupational competency specialisms that's going to be available, the structure of the specialisms, assessment methods, timeframes and grading, the handbook layout and structure, and resources required. It's all about making sure the centres are comfortable in what we're going to be delivering, and they are ready and fit for purpose for what, not just what centres and stakeholders can provide, but also includes employers as well to get their involvement in this to be able to move that forward. They start on the 25th of November, and as you can see, the occupational specialisms, which will be virtual, like all of them will be on the 14th, 15th, 16th and 17th of December, which we're hoping then to go through accordingly. To register, once you get the presentation through, ladies and gentlemen, please click on that and it'll take you straight to it, and then register accordingly to help move that forward. Thank you. Next slide, please. Moving on now to the mitigation. As we all know, this is difficult, and it always has been at this moment since March when it began. The pandemic does continue, unfortunately, but we do understand the challenges you and your learners may be facing. It's particularly as a result of the social distancing and other local restrictions that are coming in. For 2021, the government intent is that where assessments can continue to be delivered under normal conditions, provided it's in a safe manner, should continue to do so. We have produced a qualifications assessment and adaptations guide. This is in line with Ofqual requirements. So please have a look at that and have a read at that, and that will help you. But what we will be doing once again is providing a webinar, which is on the 3rd of December. Please again register. But this is going to go through the construction sector guidance. If you don't get an opportunity for any of these webinars, you will find that they will be pre-recorded and they will be uploaded onto the onto the website, where you'll be able to click on and review at your own pace and your own time. But again, that's the link to be able to register onto the webinar to be able to move forward. Thank you. Next slide, please. On the technicals and technical mitigations that we've already mentioned, technicals are still continuing. So the technical events and webinars, the construction craft technical qualification webinar will be commencing on the 13th of November at 3 p.m. And again, please click onto that and register. I know there's a lot of webinars for people to attend, what various and different awarding bodies are actually holding at this moment in time. But ours will all be recorded live, and then they will be there on the website for you to be able to look at a later date if need be. We've also produced some supportive links as well, and these are on his website, but to try and help so you don't have to trawl through the website, what we've done here is provided you links for it. Technicals COVID update, a technicals checklist to help you go through the dates and how you move forward. The technicals resource and support, and the crucial one as well is the technicals adaptation guide. And this is something that we've had to do and produce, like all awarding bodies have had to do. And it's now ready and live, ready to be implemented for people to go and read through. Next slide, please. Over 18 months ago now, once again, we were successful in winning the Ministry of Justice, which is the prisons contract. And I've no doubt we may have some members on this today regarding this. We do appreciate that this has certainly been challenging time for our centres that operate inside the prison sector, especially the challenges surrounding in-cell learning. Resources we did make available and still are available to support this, And the support pack is available from City and Guilds, including access to free smart screen to help them move this forward. We understand there's difficulties inside some prisons with not being able to gain access to it, but they have been there to be able to download in hardback so they can distribute it to the inmates accordingly. City and Guilds do continue to work with the MOJ sector to support our centres and learners during this, and it will be post-COVID-19. Further support and guidance, please contact our designated technical advisor, which is Jason Now. Unfortunately, at the moment, as I say, he's currently on sick, but he will be back in the next couple of days. So please don't hesitate to drop him an email, and you'll find them at the end of this presentation to move that forward. Okay, next slide, please. We have produced new resources, and they're still being produced as we speak. We produce new textbooks through Withholder Education. They're available at levels 2 and 3. They cover the diplomas, apprenticeships and technicals. Level 1 is coming soon. For examples and to purchase, please contact Thomas at that particular address. We've also produced foundation textbook for qualification in Wales, which will also be in the Welsh medium. But what you'll also find in Wales as well is they're also going to be the progression textbook along with the apprenticeship textbook as well as. We've also got new enhanced smart screen that's up and running, and we've got new smart screen being entered onto that as well. But it's only a matter of time before it's all there and up to date for people to look at. There's a considerable number there as we speak already. We've got short bite-sized videos that's been produced by a number of colleges that's sharing them with us now to be able to move that forward. And these are also useful for distance learning as well. We have been receiving ongoing feedback and we'll continue to do so, and now we can amend and support these and to provide learning resources to meet people's needs at this moment in time. Thank you. Next slide, please. External quality assurance has been difficult, as you can well imagine. Therefore, EQA activities will continue to take place remotely. This allows us to ensure the safety of our staff and associates at City and Guilds. Where critical and for high-risk qualifications, arrangements can be made for EQA activity to take place within the centre. This is at the discretion, though, of our quality team to make sure everybody will be safe to be able to do so. We at City and Guilds understand and appreciate that remote activities are not always easy for the centres and EQAs to facilitate, and we express our continued thanks during this particular time. Because we do understand that it is difficult to move things forward. Next slide, please. We are continuing going through what they call the Construction Curriculum Support Survey. We understand that 2020 has been a challenging year so far, and for the beginning of the academic curriculum 2020-2021 shows no sign of easing the challenge. So we at City and Guilds want to do all we can to support our providers and learners. Therefore, we have created a short survey to gauge the type and level of support that will be beneficial to our providers. And we do ask you to complete this, please, and provide us with your concerns that you may have and any advice you've got, so we can try and introduce that to work closely with you. The survey is open for all curriculum staff, and we appreciate you taking the time to complete this survey. Thank you. Next slide, please. We have, over the last 2 or 3 years, have an employer and industry board for the construction and building services industry. Over the last 6 months, we have merged this now to incorporate as well the building services as well. Trusted representatives meet regularly, remotely for now, to discuss issues affecting the future training and development. Members can also support direction of our products, and they do feed into this to make sure our qualifications, ensuring that industry expectations are met. Members act as experts as we develop T-levels, apprenticeships, endpoint assessments, and review our programs to support the UK construction industry. If you would like more information, please do contact Jason Howe or Naz Lewis Humphrey, which the email addresses are at the end of this to be able to move that forward. Next slide, please. What I would like to do is just briefly provide an overview of some of the members that's actually on the board. We have a few employers who are represented on the employer industry board, and it's crucial, and we wanted to make sure we had representatives from micro businesses to medium to large contractors, including manufacturers and federations. The board meet twice a year to provide their input and their feedback, which is valuable to help driving what we do to move industry forward. Thank you. Next slide, please. What we ask is you connect with us. If you use social media platforms, please follow and connect with us. We have updated the construction page on LinkedIn and Twitter. More supportive content and information is shared on these platforms. And please register for your email updates. Register for email updates, and you can see the screenshot below, which is on our website. Okay. Next slide, please. This is the construction industries team. It contains of Naz Lewis Humphreys, who's our industry manager. She works really closely with industry and makes sure what we're developing and supporting is in line with what industry requirements. And there you'll find the mobile number and the contact details. We've got Jason Howe, unfortunately is sick at the moment. He's our technical advisor. Joined us just over the last 12 months ago. Wealth of experience within the industry and education, and there you'll see his mobile number. My name's Ian Roberts, as already mentioned earlier, and I'm the technical advisor, and I currently look after the Nations, Wales, International, Scotland and Ireland, and help support out in England as well. And then Paul Brown, once again, wealth of technical experience from further education through to industry, and he currently looks after England and the endpoint assessment, the new technicals, and moving forward with that. Please don't hesitate to contact us. Anything at all that you've got, we're there to support you and help you in any way we possibly can. We've got LinkedIn, we've got his website, and we've got his employer industry board. So please don't hesitate to contact us as we move forward. Next slide, please. That stops and sums up the presentation that we've got at this moment in time, and I do hope you found that useful and interesting. As I say, Jason, myself, Paul and Naz Lewis, always available to answer any questions that you may have. So please don't hesitate that you think that this is going to be the only opportunity that you've got with us. What we do have, we have what we call telephone surgeries, and we hold them on Tuesday and a Thursday. It's open to anybody to be able to pick the phone up between 10 till 1 o'clock every Tuesday and Thursday, and I can either contact myself, Naz Lewis Humphreys, who's our industry manager, Jason or Paul Brown. So we're more than happy to answer any questions that you've got. We understand there's difficult times at present, but we are here to try and help and support you through that. And as I said, there's a lot going off at the moment, but that's what we're trying to do. And we will keep you updated as we move forward. We do have regular email alerts that go out to people, and we've also got our newsletter that goes out bi-monthly. If you're not signed up to it, you're more than happy to sign up through our website, and there you just click on and sign up accordingly. So that's it from me. So if anybody's got any questions.
Two quick ones from me, Ian. Thanks for the presentation, by the way, that was great. The events in December, there's 4 events. Are they a different event for each specialism, or is that the same presentation presented 4 different days?
It'll be the same presentation presented on 4 different days to make sure we meet the people.
So all the specialisms are covered within that one presentation?
That's correct.
Yeah, great. And the second one was just around the adaptations. Is there an expectation that there's got to be adaptations in the 2021 academic year? I thought that was an emergency procedure put in place for 2020.
What Ofqual have asked us to do, I've asked all awarding organisations to do, is to put things in place ready for it, because what we've been informed is it's more than likely that adaptation measures may have to come into place. Obviously, because what we're asking people to do at the moment is especially to try to get the practical elements of the training courses completed, not as quickly as they can, but to concentrate more on that and pick up the knowledge element. But what they're adamant is that if it does happen, we've got to have systems and procedures in place. And to be fair, Ofqual, what they normally do is they give it at short notice. So that's why we've got to have things in place ready in case there is a full lockdown. So yes, that's why we've had to put that in place, because what we've had previously they would not accept. But what they want now is on the adaptation forward, and that's why we've had to get it ready now. It's had to run through Ofqual, and then we've run it past the various bodies. So yes, it could happen, and that's what they're planning on for.
Okay, so maybe this is a question I shouldn't ask then. So are you thinking that where previously the expectation there's a clear split between training and that preparation for assessment and then moving into assessment, that we're actually kind of doing that quasi model that we was told not to do many years ago, where it's kind of training and assessment altogether?
I think under exceptional circumstances, and this is all about making sure we do not disadvantage any learners and we don't stop their progression. We're seeing it at the moment with A-levels and further education on that side of things. I think what's crucial is they do not want to disadvantage learners. So it's all about making sure we have support mechanisms in place so it doesn't happen like it happened last year, whereas we as an awarding organisation, and I can only speak from our awarding organisation, we were informed back end of May that this had to be put in place, ready, and we had a week's notice to put all this into place and then run the relevant event. Hopefully this won't happen, but more than likely it could happen, so nobody knows what the future lies at this moment in time. Hopefully, with colleges being able to remain open and schools for etc., that training can still continue. But what may happen is, on full lockdown again, hopefully it won't happen, is that we're trying to just be prepared for that. And what they're advising is all awarding organisations have these systems and procedures in place, which is what we've had to do. And then we've had to not just run it past Ofqual, we've had to get confirmation that they will accept that accordingly. So that's why we've had to put these procedures in place now, ready in case this does actually happen. Does that answer your question, Julian?
It does, yeah. I'm kind of trying to wear two hats. So I'm thinking if I'm in the centre and I've got my EQA coming in, and I'm kind of working that there could be this model where if the training model that somebody's built is great, I'm going to accept that as an assessment later on, if adaptation is allowed at the end of the year. But if I've got an EQA coming in, say, December and January, and that decision hasn't been made, is there an empathy from the EQA to the centre to kind of understand the model that they're working?
The difficulty is, at the moment in time, all our EQA visits, can only speak from they are being carried out remotely. So there's no face-to-face visits at this moment in time. That's not to say they'll start in January, providing things improve. So what will happen is, and it's through adaptation again, like we had last year, models that are marked accordingly are carried out under the current diploma guidelines. Will continue as what happened last year, where the results that's been decisions that's been made by the tutor, the assessor, will remain. That will remain, and then what will happen is accumulation of that will be put forward. What can't happen is when there's assessments that's got to be carried out, mandatory assessments and exams, for example, and things like that, they will still have to take place at this moment in time. So when where we're on, if you're talking about the current diplomas, where continual assessment is being carried out, that will still continue and that will be accepted through remote invigilation by an external quality assurer. And unless things change, but that's where it's going to be at this moment in time. But hopefully things will change, things will improve, and we can go back. But will it go back to as we have it in the past? I'm not so sure. Does that answer your question, Julie?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay. As I say, unfortunately, Jason can't be with you today. He only went off yesterday, and hopefully he'll be back with us by back end of next week. Hopefully. I hope you found that useful. But as I say, any questions at all, please. You've got his email addresses. That's what we're here for. And you've probably more chance of getting hold of us now because we are all working from home than what you probably have done previously. But that's what we're here for, to work with you and gain your valuable support. And we're in this together. We're all working in it together. And hopefully everybody keeps safe. And that's the crucial thing.
All right, well, hopefully everyone's got a nice warm cup of tea or coffee. Well, yeah, thank you very much for inviting me along today. And yeah, for those who don't know, my name's Sean Wilkins from the Brick Development Association. I'm going to take about 20 minutes to go through just sort of an overview of the market, really, where we're at the moment. Obviously, sort of the impact of coronavirus features quite heavily there, and then just the stuff that we've been up to, the work that we've been doing as an association, which hopefully will be of some interest to you, and hopefully you know, we'll be able to assist you in delivering the courses that you do. So yeah, if there's anything that comes up, feel free to jump in and interrupt, or we can leave it towards the end. Right. So yeah, just sort of starting with a bit of an overview of construction. This is a slide from the latest Autumn Construction Products Association economic forecast, which just obviously attempts to sort of map out where we're going in the future. So, and just put it into a bit of context, they're predicting sort of GDP in the UK to fall about 10% this year. So you can see from that 2020 figure of falling 14.5%, that predicting construction to be a bit worse than the general economy, and then bouncing back sort of 13.5% next year, and then sort of back to where we were last year by 2022 in that projection. Obviously, it's dependent slightly on the impact of this second lockdown and how long that lasts for. But sort of within that overall construction forecast, there is a lot of variance from sector to sector. Things like civils are not too badly affected, but actually the area that we're most interested in from a brick point of view, which is house building, that is more badly affected than construction generally. So having a look at this slide here, which is the output for private housing development, we're actually looking at sort of a 20% drop this year, and only a 10% recovery in 2021 and an 8% recovery in 2022. So still sort of a little way off where we were last year in terms of private housing construction. And again, there's a lot of uncertainty within the private housing specifically. At the moment, there's a lot of support, a lot of government support in terms of demand in private housing. But next year, we've got the Help to Buy scheme being amended, sort of being phased out, the start of that phasing out, We've also got the reduction and the freeze in stamp duty ended in April. And then obviously the impact of Brexit is going to impact the more sort of speculative side of construction, which private house building certainly is. So yeah, we are expecting private housing output to perform slightly worse than industry average, although there is a lot of uncertainty there. The other big area that we're interested in from a brick point of view is RM&I, which is the repair, maintenance and improvement. And looking at the output there, it isn't as badly affected as the new build construction. So a 14.5% fall this year, and then a similar bounce back next year. So 2021, we should be in a similar position to where we were in 2019. And I think the thing with the RM&I is that there's a strong correlation there with housing transactions rather. So, people moving home, obviously getting in there and wanting to do a lot of improvement work when they move in. Obviously a much bigger sector than just brick. Not everyone's doing extensions. There's a lot of just internal work, which doesn't impact brick. But still a relevant sector for us. And then looking at our BDA information, so we collect information from the manufacturers on the dispatches, so on the brick sales every month. And you can see from this slide, obviously 2020 is the red, and then the previous 3 years in the blue lines. And you can see sort of quite dramatically the impact from COVID. So, in April, when we went into the first slightly more dramatic lockdown, the brick dispatches dropped down to about 20 million for the month, which is way, way below where we'd expect it to be. But you can see that sort of, May, June, July up to August, it was quite a strong bounce back to where we would expect it to be compared to the previous 3 years. And that a lot of that seems to be with developers, with builders restarting on existing sites that they were halfway through, before this coronavirus lockdown started. And actually that demand has bounced back quite quickly. I think in the medium term, there is a lot of uncertainty by some sort of records from the NHBC. The new sites which are starting are down about 40%. And so I think we will start to see that line probably drop back down again in the medium term as that lack of new sites coming through starts to have an impact on demand. So that's a bit of a whistle stop in terms of where the market is. And then just moving on to the works that we've been doing as an association, which might be relevant for yourselves. The first big thing we've been doing for the last 18 months, and Andrew Kanan's been quite involved in from a guild point of view, has been updating the sort of the BDA textbook, which is the Guide to Successful Brickwork. You might be familiar with it. So this is the cover of the new book, and that's been about probably 18 months now in development and updating it and getting the fourth edition out. But yeah, that's finally been published earlier this month, and that is available to order online. And this is, I put this in, I thought you might find this interesting. This is a list of the names from the panel who were originally involved in pulling the content for the first edition together. So you might recognize a few of the names there. And then what we've done with this latest edition is, is just an update with that original content, just making sure that the references to all the latest standards and the latest sort of best practice and products is all included in there. And then just to make you aware, really, that that Michelmersh in particular, they have sort of ordered 350 copies, and they are donating them. So if you're not aware of that already, it might be worth just getting in contact with them if you'd be interested in receiving a couple of copies. And if that's no good and you want to order some copies, just to make you aware that there is a discount code which is GSB25. And that will get you 25% off the cost of purchasing that. So, you know, if you need any help with that, or you can't remember that code, just drop me an email and we can help you out with ordering those. And I think there is even for slightly larger orders, they will entertain bigger discounts than that. If you want to order any more, or you want to sort of group together, so you can access that discount. The other big thing that we've been doing over the last couple of years is the update to the workmanship standard. So BS 8000 Part 3, the 8000 series is a suite of workmanship standards, and it's aimed sort of primarily at the site trades. So it covers all the things that you'd expect there. And Part 3 is our standard for masonry. So that has been updated, and that was released at the start of this year. And not a really comprehensive update to that standard. The content, you know, fairly similar. It's more just primarily rearranging the order of that standard, so that actually it sort of goes in the same order as you'd expect sort of works to flow on site. Actually just taking that content which was there and just making it a bit more user friendly, a bit more accessible, you know, making sure that it's all up to date, again, with sort of latest products and the latest sort of ways of working on site. You know, the health and safety side of things has changed an awful lot since that previous edition of that standard. And then we have been asked by the BSI to sort of to take that standard, and what they wanted to do is see if there was a way of taking these workmanship standards and turning them into effectively a checklist, with the idea that then that would be the foundation for perhaps, you know, turning that into some sort of digital offering which could be used by site managers to manage the quality of what was being built on site, you know, whether that is through an app or some sort of online portal. So that has been done, and it's not, it is a bit more of an art than a science with this checklisting. We've sort of written it with the idea of, you know, your typical low-rise residential development in mind. There's a bit of flexibility in there in terms of, you know, the options for how each individual point is inspected, you know, whether it is sort of a visual check or a measured check, or, you know, for some things taking a sample. And then just a simple sort of, you know, tick or cross, and some space to sort of elaborate with comments there. And the other thing that we've done to sort of to try and help with that process is to put an indication in there of the criticality. So sort of 1 being low to 5 being high. And then, you know, 5 being the things which are sort of critical to life safety. So, you know, the things which impact structural stability, you know, the obvious ones like wall ties being in properly. And then also the things that, you know, potentially affect fire safety, you know, which has obviously been sort of front and center for everyone for the last few years, you know, making sure that fire breaks are installed correctly within the cavity, that sort of thing. Because it is based on the workmanship standard, it is limited to just the masonry elements of the build. But the idea is that as the other parts of the 8000 series are updated, there will be a checklist in place for all the different trades. So you can have a single point to access all the different trades. I think they're targeting it primarily sort of at the, the site managers who take an overview of all the trades, who may not be as familiar with specific trades like you would expect a bricklayer to be. But nevertheless, I think with the content there, especially for new starters, for students, for people just starting out on site, it can just serve as a useful sort of thing to jog the memory of all the different steps. It's about 14 pages long, a couple of hundred different points on the checklist, all those sort of different steps to make sure that nothing's being forgotten there, and that actually the sort of the best practice is being followed. So with that, the BSI standard being updated, the next task was really to take it through and make sure that all of the other bits of industry guidance are in line with that workmanship standard. Obviously our own BDA guidance, but the other parts of the industry, where there are standards in place, which to one extent or another, bricklayers will need to comply with. So the big one we'll be doing there for the last couple of years is with the NHBC. Obviously they've got their standards. The NHBC, they have a lot of leverage with the main contractors, the subcontractors. If you're not complying with those standards, then you can't sign the project off ultimately. So making sure that the workmanship standard is in line with what the NHBC is saying was quite critical. So the first part of their standards that we updated was section 9.1. And that section sort of covers all of the finishes and the quality of the finishes. So that is the area where they actually specify the tolerances for fair-faced masonry, fair-faced brickwork. So just going through, and again, making sure that it's all up to date, making sure that it's all as user-friendly as possible. The good thing about the NHBC standards is that they are free to access, and they try to put as much sort of interactive content in there as possible. So making sure that they've got sort of 3D details that you can sort of get up on your phone and spin it around to make sure that you fully understand how the junctions of the cavity trays are working, that sort of thing. So that has been updated, and that is out this year. And then the part that we've been working on this year is section 6.1, which is more around the design and the specification of external masonry walls. So, probably more towards the architects and the designers, but I think sort of still sort of very relevant to understand the bigger picture and how the brickwork fits in with the bigger picture. And yeah, again, sort of free to access that, and that will be updated next year, and will be in line with the 8000 Part 3 workmanship standard and our standard as well. And then finally, MBS, the other sort of easy one, the F10 specification that everyone knows, which the architects sort of jot down in their specification, on their drawings. And yeah, not too much there. They've got sort of guidance notes that go along with writing these specifications for the architects. So we've been working with them there just to make sure that all of those guidance notes are up to date with the latest, the latest documents, the latest standards. And again, sort of just that task of making sure that all of the information which is out there, which eventually sort of ends up in the specifications and on the drawings, is just consistent and coordinated, and everyone's sort of putting the same message out. And then finally, just our BDA documents. We write these with a panel from industry, the sort of the technical people from the different manufacturers, and there's a panel which Andrew Kanan sits on. Obviously, he does his work with the guild as well. So with the BDA documents, again, there's a bit more sort of flexibility there for us to put helpful guidance out rather than, you know, the BSI and the NHBC type documents, which have to have a bit more of a legal basis and a bit more of a sort of a compliance focus. So there's guidance out there for things, you know, like the emerging trends in construction and in brickwork. So things like, you know, a lot of the hit and miss brickwork and the textured brickwork, and actually, you know, some ideas of the different ways that you can do those type of details. You know, some of the design and specification things which the architects, the engineers need to know. But then also those sort of workmanship considerations that need to be taken into account just to make sure that those sort of trendy details are done as well as they can be, and that, you know, you're not sort of compromising that long-term performance of brickwork by sort of doing those details less robustly than they could be. And then other things like modern methods of construction, you know, seems to be sort of massively flavour of the month. You know, actually, what does that mean when it comes to brickwork? Are we talking about these sort of composite lintels with slips bonded on? Are we talking about the sort of the giant precast elements which are made in factories? You know, are we talking about things like the, I don't know if you've seen those VR goggles that you can wear, which sort of projects, you know, the drawings onto the real world scenario. So you can see sort of where every brick needs to go, and you can do this sort of, you know, quite complex construction without having to sort of flip back to the drawings all the time to see exactly what you want to do. So I think there's, when people talk about, you know, these modern methods and these sort of new ways of doing things, it's sometimes quite difficult to know exactly what they mean by it. So actually just trying to put some meat on the bones there in terms of how that applies to brickwork, and all of these things available via the website if you're interested in seeing any more of those. And then in terms of sort of how people are accessing content, you know, things like YouTube and all the videos, it's a little bit beyond me if I'm completely honest, but you know, apparently that is what how the kids sort of get their information these days. So I don't know whether you're familiar with this chap, Rodian. He's a bricklayer, also sort of very interested in the video and the production side of things, and sort of off his own back really has produced some sort of very high quality, very sort of well edited videos. You know, some of them sort of just on sort of single topics, like how to sort of wind your lines and that sort of stuff. He got in contact with us via, I think he was talking about the textbook, and we met with him a couple of times, and actually, you know, anything we can do to assist there in terms of him sort of producing that content and materials and that sort of thing. And yeah, I'm sort of amazed by the amount of people that have subscribed to his video channel. You know, the amount of interaction that he gets with students and with sort of the general public as well. You know, doing a bit of DIY and wanting to have a go at brickwork. So yeah, obviously a very, you know, relatively recent, but you know, quite an innovative and an interesting way of people accessing the knowledge and the content of how to teach bricklaying. And then just moving on to sort of more general subjects, which might be relevant to this. Sustainability is one that we've been spending a lot of time looking at recently. You know, obviously we've got the 2050 net zero CO2 emissions target, you know, things like that. We've seen a lot of the Extinction Rebellion protests, and actually, you know, these things are having an impact on, you know, the developers and the builders. Actually, they are asking the question of manufacturers, they're asking the questions to us about how sustainable brick is, and actually, you know, that message does seem to be getting across to them as a consideration for, you know, when they're specifying materials, when they're designing buildings. And I think it's a difficult, or you know, has been a difficult one. I think to communicate. A lot of people are sort of just catching up with with exactly what they need to be thinking about, how to do that analysis for whether a brick or a building or development is sustainable in the widest sense. We've seen a lot of people actually just sort of focus on the embodied CO2 emissions from building products. So things like timber, if you do that analysis, as timber leaves the factory gate, it looks a lot better than concrete products or brick products. But actually, does that mean that it's more sustainable? I don't think so. If a brick is lasting 150 years, sort of solid, safe performance, then actually maybe that's the more sustainable option than a building which is going to be there sort of 30, 40 years and it's potentially you're not getting the good performance and it's not safe. And I think especially for things like residential housing, where actually it's the biggest investment that people are going to make in their life. Actually, are we happy with are the general public happy with taking on things like timber frame construction? So we've put some documents together to actually sort of try and communicate that argument that you can't really be sort of making that comparison of just product to product and that's your assessment of whether something is sustainable. You need to be looking at this at a systems level, so a whole world build up, a whole building analysis. If you're looking at the products, you need to look at the whole life cycle of the building. So from the manufacture of those products, how sustainable is the construction? How sustainable is it in use? And then at the end of the life, what happens to the materials? So things like, can the bricks be recovered? If it's a timber building, is the timber burnt? And actually, it very quickly gets very complex. And it's a different sort of messages depending on who you're speaking to. So we've attempted to just on this one-page document bring together the sort of dozen messages which we think are key to the sustainability argument for brick, for masonry, for heavyweight construction. So things like that: resilience, the lack of maintenance, the long life expectancy, the lack of packaging, the local supply chain, natural materials, and then the reuse and the recycling at the end of life. So bringing all that together in one place. And again, all of this content is available via the website. And then the other big one which we're working on at the moment, we call it sort of tackling the major issues. It's a very sort of small percentage of the market, sort of less than 1%. But we have seen a little bit of sort of brick imports from outside of Europe over the last couple of years. And we were approached by an organization who was looking at sort of bonded labor and environmental destruction in Cambodia, in Asia. And they were particularly focusing on the sort of the brick industry over there. And actually during their investigations, they found that there's a lot of sort of bonded, effectively slave labor sort of within those brick industries. And that is, the fuels used to fire those kilns is sort of, it's quite a lot of it is sort of toxic plastic waste. Other parts of it are sort of unsustainable, timber from contributing to deforestation, which is forcing people off their land and, making them sort of vulnerable again to this sort of being sort of used as this bonded labor and this really sort of negative cycle. And that they're expanding that project and they've sort of identified this area, it's called the Asian Brick Belt, sort of across the top of India and into Nepal. Whereas actually that these practices are quite typical. And we are seeing bricks from that area sort of making its way into the UK and into the market. And not surprisingly, especially sort of with the handmade bricks, actually, if your labour costs are minimal or zero, and your fuel costs are low because there's sort of this unsustainable deforestation, then actually that it's a very cheap to produce brick, and actually that does offset the cost of sending the brick halfway around the world. So they approached us and sort of asked us what we were, if we could help and if there's anything we could sort of plan to do about it. So it's been a little while in development, but we've sort of ended up with this Brickmakers Quality Charter. And the idea is that actually, it's an easy thing that any brickmaker can apply for it. We can't, we're not creating a barrier to entry for any brickmaker wherever they are in the world. But actually, to sign up to that charter, they would need to have in place things like an anti-modern slavery policy, employment practice, need to comply with the construction products regulations. So the CE markers, you actually have some assurance there around the product as well. And these, I think from a UK, from a European point of view, these are sort of basically legal minimums. But actually, we just want to make an easy way for customers, for designers to be able to identify that the bricks that they're purchasing, the bricks that they're specifying, are from a responsible supply chain, and there hasn't been that sort of environmental destruction or the bonded labor, the slave labor involved in at any point in the manufacture of those bricks. So we've had a bit of a soft launch with the builders merchants, just to let them know what we're doing there and sort of allow them to have those conversations with their supply chain and do those investigations before we all go public with this. But then in next year, so 2021, we will be launching this publicly, and hopefully that will get rolled out quite widely, and that will be a useful scheme for everyone. And that should be it. Is there any questions on any of that? Any comments? Anything that you'd like us to be having a look at from an industry point of view, which would help with what you guys are doing?
Yeah, a couple of questions then, Sean.
Yep.
So just looking back at the forecast that you made.
Yep.
Quite interesting. Are they based on an ongoing threat of COVID, that rise would still come back in 21 and 22, or is that making some assumption that the COVID risk goes lower? That's the first part of this question. The second part, I'm quite interested then, what are the drivers around that productivity, and is there still impact of Brexit?
So this scenario, the main construction scenario, doesn't account for prolonged second lockdown. This was it was updated back in the August,
when things were looking better.
Yeah, when things were looking a bit better. Mm-hmm. But actually, I think even then they sort of knew that should this second lockdown come about, then construction was probably going to be exempted from that second lockdown. And that has proved to be the case. Construction can continue during this lockdown. I think, we will see some sort of indirect impact like we did last time around the logistics and deliveries, and, the site itself may be okay, but actually people getting to site and getting back from site and that sort of thing is going to have an impact on productivity.
Because I think, in fairness for us around here, the building probably closed for about 2 weeks. So then the guys got back to work, but what was happening was perhaps where the manufacturers were and things like that, they were locked down. Yeah. So then ended up being problems with bag materials and stuff like that. You couldn't get fresh materials.
Yeah. So I think at the start of this year, we weren't in too bad a place from a production point of view. There was sort of about 450 million bricks in stock at the start of this year, which, if we didn't produce another brick, if we turned off every single manufacturing facility, would be enough capacity to last for about 4 months. So we're actually sort of, compared to the last 3 or 4 years, we're in quite a good place in terms of stocks. So there was a shutdown of production for probably for a month or two, but actually then got sort of started up quite quickly after the lockdown ended. I think where we saw the biggest issues in terms of getting bricks to site was not so much having bricks in the sort of in the factory stockyards, but actually getting them to the sites, and issues mostly around the around the deliveries, and actually having the logistics in place to get the deliveries to merchants, and then from merchants to sites or direct to manufacturers. Again, sort of people panicking and putting in orders with 2 or 3 brick makers, and then cancelling the other 2 orders at the last minute, which which
I bet they also had a load of toilet roll in the toilets on site as well, didn't they?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's all of that sort of stuff. So, I mean, all of that. So, sort of to bring it back to your question, I think those elements have been factored into this main scenario.
And the second part of the question, I was just probably my own interest around what the current drivers are. So things like the Brexit. Is there any reduction because we've got people leaving the country, or?
Yeah. So this model, and I think sort of private housing output is the one that we're most interested in. It does account for Brexit, but it doesn't account for a no deal Brexit.
Is there any fear of losing foreign labour?
I don't think there's a fear of losing the foreign labour which we have in at the moment. I think we are starting to see a reduction in sort of new labour coming in from within Europe. So I think that will have an impact in the longer term. But then I think at the same time we do see industry making this extra effort to ramp up training and everything that you guys are doing, and the apprentices and all of those efforts with especially the ABC and the contractors are doing. Eve knows all about it. So I think that it's a difficult one to say in the long term, around the labour shortages. But my feeling is that it probably will equalise itself. And actually, if the wages go up a bit in any parts of the country where there are shortages, then people do tend to move. That's what we have seen previously. I think the medium-term drivers for housing output, which we're really interested in, and I think the things that we can probably have the most impact in terms of lobbying government on, it is that extending the Help to Buy scheme. So actually, making sure that houses are accessible to those first-time buyers with the smaller deposits, and that was due next year to start sort of ramping down the access to that. So I think if we can persuade government to keep it going as it is, or to slow down the pace of that ramping down, that will be a huge benefit. If there's anything we can do to extend the stamp duty holiday, I think that would be a huge benefit, because you can see sort of from all the numbers of the property transactions, that has been a huge help in terms of getting people moving, which then obviously sort of creates that demand for the house builders. And if the house builders have that confidence that people are going to buy those properties, they will bring them to market a lot quicker. And then finally, if we do manage to get a deal out of the Brexit, and just avoid that really chaotic no deal Brexit scenario, I think that is going to help the issue. With bricks, they don't really, there's not a huge amount of import export, so it doesn't really affect us from that point of view directly. But as much as a no deal Brexit would have a chaotic impact on the rest of the economy, and employment and all that sort of thing, then as much as we can avoid that, is going to help house building where, you know, people are effectively, you know, investing money over a couple of years. So, you know, the more predictability that they have, the more likely that that is to happen.
From a teaching perspective, and again, this is another Brexit one really, I think all the standards that you were showing look as though they were updated standards. Have all the old EU standards now been adopted into British law?
So the design standards, the Eurocode 6, no, there won't be any change there in terms of the design and the specification standards. The BSI and CEN, which is like the European equivalent, they are sort of standalone private bodies. They're nothing really to do with the European Commission or with the UK government. So they have committed to sort of retaining the partnership that they have together, and sort of keeping that going into the future. You know, with the design standards, you know, engineers, they can design to whatever standards they want, whether it is, you know, the old British standard, the Eurocodes, EC6, the you know, American standards, or whatever. I think it's where those standards feed into the, you know, the bits of software which the designer uses, I think is the where it has the biggest impact. So in terms of the design standards, that will be constant. In terms of the product standards, so the construction products regulation, that is where and that is what is basically the CE mark, which is fixed to the product, and that is where you effectively, that quality mark, you know, where you get that conformity of performance. That is where we will copy and paste the European CPR regulations, and then that will basically become the UK CPR, and we will have this transition period where you'll still be able to buy CE marked products within the UK before we switch in 2022 to a UK CA mark, which is basically.
So eventually the EU, as a user, the EU type will disappear.
Yeah, the CE mark will disappear in 2022, and then you would have a UK mark. But actually, you know, the test methods and the declarations of performance that sit behind that mark will be exactly the same. I don't see those changing. You know, certainly not in the near future. It may be that the Europeans want to go down a slightly different route with their construction products regulation, and they want to bring in things like regulated dangerous substances, and maybe things like sustainability performance characteristics in there. So things like the, you know, actually as part of your CE mark, you have to declare the embodied CO2 emissions within that construction product. But yeah, I know there's a consultation out on the CPR at the moment, so I think any sort of deviation within those product standards is likely to be sort of many years down the line, if at all. And yeah, I think especially for something like brick, which is, you know, it's not like it's a complex cladding system or you know, a piece of mechanical or electrical equipment, you know, ventilation equipment internally. Actually, I think, yeah, in the long term, even I can't really see a huge amount of deviation in the product standards between, you know, what Germany and Belgium and Denmark are doing and what we do. And actually, with the European product standards, there are countries like Norway and Switzerland, you know, who are not part of the European Union, who, you know, are sort of equal members of that those committees which develop those product standards. So I suspect that is where we will end up. And then, you know, from a BSI, from a UK point of view, we're in quite a good position with regards to those product standards, because we are the secretariat for those parts of the European standards. So yeah, I think in all likelihood that will continue into the future.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Sean. Cheers.
So, do you want to leave it there? I know have I gone a few minutes over time?
No, don't worry about the time. When it's interesting, it's interesting. But just
If anybody's got any questions, can you email either on the chat or the send to, and Sean's more than happy to answer any questions, or you can email him directly.
So yeah, I mean, we're a technology business, and we set up a mobile platform back in 2017 because we was looking at the market generally within manufacturing, hospitality, healthcare, and it's just that no one's actually gone and set up an automated hiring and workforce management platform for the construction industry. Everyone seems to be plugged in on their mobile phones these days. Technology is improving very rapidly, and construction is being left behind on certain elements. So we set up the Square to do three things really on a module basis, and it all started off from hiring. So working in the industry and had a vast bit of knowledge on how that element works on a big build scenario, not the domestic, is to create a platform to allow construction companies to hire a workforce and to add to their labour workforce as they win projects and lose projects and so on, they can minimise. And then also to deal with like the compliance side. Obviously, Brexit's a real big one at the moment, and the workforce, especially down in the south of the UK, is a very large percentages from Europe and so on. And then it's managing that compliance and right to work within the UK. And then also the HMRC liabilities that go along with those individuals, and to have a system which is HMRC approved to manage all of those payments. So we set up the Square, and the Square is there to for employers and for construction workers to be able to get connected and find work in one simple platform, and it's just built for the construction industry. And what we've also gone and done is to give a little bit of love back to the construction industry, is to allow companies to use the platform for free of charge to attract new blood into the industry. And we go around in various ways to work with companies on the apprenticeship angle, to get into colleges, to educate the tutors that there is a platform their students can use to help them knock on doors to find employment or to find a training partner to help them go through their college courses. So I'll just go on to the first one, which is very much the hiring element of the Square, and it's pretty simple. The workers or the apprentices or the students can download the app for free, or they can use it on the desktop, use it on any device. They set up a very short profile if they've got qualifications. So especially in the brickwork world, there's been a massive push, which the ABC has been doing really well at, on upskilling to MVQ level 2, so blue card. And that data is actually held by CITB. So when a bricklayer or hod carrier is actually registering on our platform, we're building up a digital CV for them. So normally a bricklayer wouldn't have a CV generally. It's normally turn up on site, lay some bricks, and off you go. And if you're good, you stay, and if you're not, you go. So what we're trying to do is build up this sort of like platform and work history for these bricklayers. And so we pull all this information from various organisations to create a digital CV for them without it being too taxing. So they can set up a profile within 2 minutes on the actual Square. And then as soon as they've gone through that process, we will match them to relevant opportunities from their skill set. And then for the employers, for them to access it. They can download the app free. They can set up jobs or opportunities on the Square for free. We then match them to all those relevant individuals. We send out communication via text message, in-app messages, and also emails that there's this brickwork contractor looking for X, Y, and Z in this location, willing to pay X amount of pounds for this duration, dealing with face work or block work and so on. And then they can see a big list, which I'll show you later, of all the bricklayers in the vicinity. So it's a very simple way of just connecting the industry. And I think traditionally it's been done via word of mouth, in the pub, newspapers. Technology's come along a little bit with like CV Library, Total Jobs, Indeed, and so on. But what we're trying to do is just build a dedicated platform just for the industry and be able to qualify those individuals with their credentials. So when they actually turn up on site, that they do have a bricklaying qualification and a health and safety certificate to actually get on site. The benefits of it, it's there to empower companies to hire safe and skilled construction workers cheaper, because I think to post opportunities in newspapers can be quite expensive. To use a recruitment agency can be very expensive. Because it's all an automated system, the costs for us are very cheap to run the business. So we give the platform away like at £49 per month for unlimited access to it. And they can hire one bricklayer or 1,000 bricklayers if they wanted to. Because we are using data to qualify the individuals and match them to the relevant opportunities, it should have a better hit rate on the quality from the verification point of view. The bricklayers have the opportunity to see the different opportunities and different types of work before they actually turn up. They can see the hours, the duration, the rate of pay, who's actually advertising, so it's not masked. So if there's a company that they like to work with, then they're advertising and they can cherry pick where they work. For the employers, it's sort of like it gives them an overview of when they're going to start on site, or if they're tendering for sites, they can go on and post an opportunity and see how many bricklayers are in the vicinity. So they know if they do pick up that project that there's X amount that they can go at. And they can hire from anywhere on any device. There's no middleman, so as in we're not an agency, but the product is operating just like an agency. The next big bit is a compliance which we built in. So with the individuals, and this is quite interesting at the moment, just because of what's going on with Brexit, and Priti Patel's not really given too much love on allowing certain skills within the construction industry to be exempt from the process that they have to be going through. And we're working with companies where we are running a whole compliance show to verify the individuals on the right to work standpoint from an immigration. And which is quite important on big build sites for the contractor to know about their workforce and how compliant are they. If they was to have a check from immigration, are they confident that all their paperwork is in place? We built the Square as well to handle all of the onboarding of new starters and the verification. So we have an automated ID checker that checks documents for are they legitimate. We do it from a biometric standpoint. So the picture that's taken from the individual to the picture that's actually on the document that they provide matches up. And then also we bounce into HMRC for their tax status, whether they're PAYE or CIS registered, to make sure that they're being taxed and the revenue collecting the right amount of money, and that's all automated. And then we give them this nice dashboard where they can have a look to see how compliant their workforce is, to see the breakdown of their workforce between bricklayer, hod carrier, general labourer, whether they're using any machine operators and so on. And then also the breakdown on the demographic of where does my workforce actually come from, whether it's the UK, whether it's European countries and so on. So there's that element of it. I think I've just gone over that one. and then the second element of all of on the compliance sort of side is it leads into the payroll. So it's very much payrolling the individuals. Traditionally, it's all been done via a paper form, which is filled out. Then documents are taken by a site manager and then scanned, sent over to head office. Then head office will then get that document, upload it into some accounting system, and then they will put that in a filing cabinet somewhere. What we've gone and done is just digitalize that whole process. From a GDPR point of view, the personal data of that individual is not just flying around on pieces of paper on a desk on site. It's all in a secure cloud. And also when it goes over to head office, I mean, I've walked into brickwork contractors and they've got banks of filing cabinets just full of new starter application forms, and we get rid of all of that. And it's there to be tapped into on a secure system on a dashboard whenever they need that information, if they need it. What I'll do, I mean, this is some of the companies that are using us at the moment, which I think you'll probably recognise some of the brands and so on. It's not just brickwork that we deal with, but we are spending a lot of time to work on the brickwork sort of side of the fence, because our three biggest user groups out of 110,000 individuals on the square is brickwork, scaffolding and apprentices. And I think for us, we're trying to educate the next generation that there's a whole industry out there, and how do we stop them or lose them to the manufacturing sector, the retail sector and so on. I mean, obviously COVID's probably helped a little bit on that aspect. How do we use that technology to sex it up and to attract them in and educate them that there's this whole industry out there. And some of the key players here that you can see, like especially with Swift and Lee Marley and Barclay Group, that we've been working really closely with, are trying to strive to get in there and try different things, which has been amazing to see. I think Mike Walsh is when we met him a little while back, has taken it under his wing really, and really helped us to develop out a product to help improve standards of hiring for his business, to minimize churn rates, so it's more cost effective for him. And it's also there as a compliance tool to make sure that when he's going in for tenders that he's 100% happy with his workforce. And then also helping the apprenticeship angle for him to use if he needs to, or for us to connect or help connect him to relevant colleges for where he has sites where he needs to get apprentices on site and so on. So Mike's been very good to us on that side of the fence. And that's a little case study that we've recently put together for him on how many days we've saved him on just not having to deal with paper anymore, or how compliant is his workforce, or the amount of hires that he's actually gone and done via the app. So that's that element of it. I'm also going to try and show you something else as well, which is very much the website. So let me just go there. And so what we've been doing in the background is mapping the UK labour force and crunching data for like a bricklayer. How far is he willing to travel to go to work on a day-to-day basis? What's his average rate? What's his average age? Where is he sitting in his career? Where can we upskill him to the next level so he can earn more money? Why can't we get those hod carriers into bricklaying jobs? So what we've been doing is, this is just a visual for you, of just mapping the markets. All these red dots are workers, construction workers, which have been verified. And these are opportunities that we've had within the area on a sort of like brickwork front. And it's just trying to understand the data. So then moving forward, that companies can be more streamlined on the way that they operate. If we're going to have to upskill our current workforce, how are we going to do that? Because if the European market slowly gets shut down, then we could be in serious trouble, not necessarily in the Midlands or the North, but mainly in the London area where we see it, is there's a massive, some companies may have 70 or 80% of their labour is actually European rather than UK. And that's going to be the tricky scenario. So we're mapping that and trying to understand the data on that side. This is the actual platform that companies can use to advertise either apprentices or bricklayers or hod carriers or general labourer. They fill out a very simple form, what they actually require for them to actually get on the site, qualifications, sort of work it is, the location, a little bit of information on the actual job description, the rates, the duration, and the points of contact. And once that job goes live, then our system will match that company to all of the relevant bricklayers within that vicinity. And it's matched them to 437 bricklayers within the Midlands. And they can go through and see their credentials here on this digital CV that we've actually gone and built for them. And their qualifications, which has actually been pulled from CITB. But that's what we're doing in the industry. And I think last year, I think it was, Christian invited me to the Guild of Bricklayers event in London, and saw the good work that the competition does, and just trying to work out how we can get involved and help the guild, bricklaying just generally, elevate itself to attract new people in. I've heard from other brickwork contractors, the NHBC is also setting up some brick academy across the UK. But the problem is still just getting the individuals and educating them, and where do you get them from? And it's all like, how can we harness the technology and the media, social media side of it to attract them in into the industry and into the trade. But yeah, I mean, that's us. That's what we do. And hopefully it gives you a bit of an insight onto how we can maybe work together on that front. So if you've got any questions, let me know. If you want to sign up, let me know. And I'll help you out.
One quick one, Alan. Thanks for that. Absolutely mind-blowing, some of the work that you're doing there in terms of the industry and supporting the industry.
Thank you.
How many trainees, when you look at that map, how many trainees have found employment through the platform or apprenticeships, etc.?
Yeah, so interesting enough, when we first set this up, because this is ever evolving, and as we develop it, so I think we had about 4,500 apprentices register on the square, and because we don't charge a success fee, or we allow the companies to deal with those individuals how they see fit, whether they go direct employed with the company, whether they go on a short-term contract, whether they use us or use someone else. We don't actually see that success rate, which is a little bit annoying. So we recently built in a button that says hired. So when we first started, we was working with Barclay Group and was doing about 40 odd hires a year just with that one particular division of Barclay. So a big developer down in the London area. So because what happens is they generally use us to source the individual, and then they go through their own vetting process, which may be interview stage, then actually going out onto and then starting with them. But we don't actually get the full feedback on whether they actually started or not. So it's something that it's really hard to try and work out. And I think this is where we're growing, and this is where the compliance sort of side, it gives us the data to actually understand who actually, once they get hired, do they actually physically start, because now we're collating the data. So I think the Square is very much there to be a matching tool, and then what happens after then is down to the candidate and the employer.
So do you think, in terms of the people that are looking at us today and working in colleges, that it's worthwhile pointing trainees in that direction for picking up an apprenticeship or an extended work placement or something like that?
Yeah, very much. And I think this is where we've been trialing it out, especially with Christian initially, and then also Jack with Hartford, and just going into a couple of colleges to understand where do we fit in, how can we help on that employability basis of. Some kids are great at knocking down doors and getting hired straight off the bat, but there's also a massive percentage that go through these courses and struggle to find employment afterwards for whatever reason, and it's no fault of their own. And if we can use a little bit of technology to help them knock down a door, to have a profile and to be in the mix, to get that opportunity, then it's something that we're looking to explore. Whether it's set up 100% right at the moment, I'm not 100% sure. I think we've and especially we've lost this year completely, really, and we're just starting to get some traction towards the end of last year with those two colleges, and then going down to the competitions as well, and understanding how it all fits together, and who do we need to be educating? Is it the tutors to educate them that actually get your students to be signing up to this so they can find employment either during their course or afterwards, so that it's not been a lost process for that individual and then they go into some other industry completely different, irrelevant to construction. So yeah, we're still trying to find our feet on that side of it. I think this is for the next generation as well, and trying to capture that and to make sure that they stay with the Square from when they are an apprentice or student apprentice, and then a fully qualified tradesperson, to then sort of like you can use this tool to find employment for the rest of your career, and it costs you nothing as an individual. So yeah, I mean, and this is where it's sort of like we'd love to roll it out across the UK to all of the students and so on. So I think we've been trying to keep it a little bit localized at the moment, because it takes time to educate people. We want to make sure it works before we go, actually, let's just give it to everyone on that front.
Yeah, I wonder if there is some training with the tutors, although I guess there's a change in demographic now of the tutors. So certainly for me, kind of the jobs that you didn't get in the pub, then Yossa told us how, showed us how to knock on the door and say, "Here's a job." So we kind of come from that generation. Those of us that are old enough to remember that. I guess nowadays, certainly the trainees are kind of used to this asynchronous communication. So to leave a profile hanging somewhere and somebody come knocking on their doors after a couple of days is perhaps the way they work. And I guess with the tutors, we're kind of in that pivot now where there are some that are kind of the new generation and some that are the old. So there probably is some training required with the tutors to kind of understand how that asynchronous communication can work with trainees.
Yeah, very much so. And I think it is. I think it's just things move on. I mean, I was very much in the era of, oh, you're a friend of that person, you can come work with me, when I was an apprentice, and that's how it was. And but also now I think things have moved on, and the digital platforms are there for the individuals to use, and they are all plugged in. So let's use it. in a fashion to get them into work, or to help once they are actually qualified to find a job, a better paying job closer to home, so their sense of well-being is better, rather than having to travel the length and breadth of the country just to find a day rate. That's the theory behind it. I think it is down to capturing those individuals at an early age in their when they're starting out as a student or an apprentice, to educate the tutors that there is this platform for them to use and to help those individuals. But then also for us, we're working really hard to capture the whole of the brickwork world on the contracting side. So where we've been hopefully a little bit useful to some colleges is introducing the contractors to the colleges to say, look, here's a really good department on brickwork. You need to be speaking to these individuals and to go into employer days and so on, and just being that conduit and helping and educating the contractors that these are the colleges doing X, Y, and Z, and you should be tapping into them and so on as well. So
I must say, even just looking at your map, it's fascinating what you've done, and I'm sure that there must be a PhD in studying the workforce in terms of, will people from Scunthorpe, are they more likely to travel than people from Plymouth, and what kind of radius would they work from? And if there's a recession, does that radius suddenly expand from 20 miles to 50 miles because they want to stay and work? So I think some of the data that you're likely to be producing will be really interesting.
Yeah. Sorry, is there anything in that data that you found so far which has surprised you at all, or?
Just I suppose the big one is money, which is always a really big key factor, especially from the contracting point of view, and of the rates and how much they've increased since we launched. Funny enough, especially in brickwork, where I think we're sitting at 150, 160 a day, and now we're sitting at 180 to 200 to 220 a day, depending on the region you're in. Which is quite a big increase over quite a short period of time, and I think also going to the movement sort of side of the fence, in the southeast, bricklayers don't like to go too far, but when you start going out into the regions, they will travel quite a decent distance, especially up north as well, to find work. And just having that bit of knowledge. And what we find as well, we have bricklaying firms from Ireland who will phone us up and just say, can you have a look on your app and see how many bricklayers you got in Brighton? Before they sort of, and what's the rates in Brighton? What are they being paid in Brighton at the moment? And then they'll put their tender in. And this is what we want to do, is we want to open this up for everyone to use, for them to be able to use this tool to tender for work and find out, like, how many are there bricklayers. If I post a job in the Midlands right here, right now, who's live and who's looking for work? And what we've got here is 437 bricklayers have been logged in over the last month who actually want to find work or potentially will be open to an opportunity. And they've all now been sent a text message. So yeah, I think we've been working with Oxford University with their think tank there to actually collate the data points to then get a very expensive data analyst person in to actually now really go through and start crunching it, and how do we make it a little bit more intelligent, and what does all this data mean? Because that's not my forte.
Amazing, absolutely amazing.
Hopefully. But yeah, we're getting that, and it's been good. It's been really nice working with the industry, and I think it's getting there on a technology point of view, and I think people are waking up to it now, and it's now harnessing it and using all the tools which are available, whether it is the goggles that you mentioned earlier, Sean, to speed up the process of visualization of the actual projects while you're actually there in real time, to data management, compliance tools, project management tools on handovers and so on. Training, online training is very big at the moment just because of the situation we're in. How do we upskill and using that technology to help it? So yeah, it should be interesting times for the construction industry over the next few years, that's for sure. But I mean, anything we like, I think for us anyway, I've identified the Guild of Bricklayers as something that we want to be part of and to try and help in any shape or form that we possibly can to elevate the brand, to let people out there who work in brickwork that they should be registered and signed up paid members to the Guild. And how can we do that? Like, we've got quite a big reach. We do a lot of social media stuff, and how can we help you promote your brand at the end of the day? So that's what we'll be keen to work on with you.
Thanks, Alan. Much appreciated. That was brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invite. Stop sharing this now, if I can work it out.
Are you just going to do a closing then, Tony, do you think?
Yeah, it would probably be nice just to see if anybody has any further questions. Not just necessarily from the speakers. I mean, obviously, if anybody has any questions that they'd like to ask the speakers particularly, then that would be nice. How would you like to handle the questions? So are you just going to get them to write a note in on the chat?
Yes, there's a chat host which will go to the host, and she's more than happy to read them out. Just put who the relevant person is you want to aim the question for.
I think if people go away as well, we're going to get the slides later on in the week, hopefully. So when we post the slides out, I think if I put my email on that, and if people have any follow-up questions that they want to kind of pick later on, then I'm happy that they come through me, and I'm a conduit for that on behalf of the Guild. And I think just to mention, as this is the first conference that we've done online, I think following this, what we need to consider is the future of the conference and kind of what that might look and feel like, and the people that want to be involved in that. So if you want to be involved, or you're part of an organisation that feels as though you want to help shape the conference in the future. So I know Terry will be taking that back to Keith on behalf of the BDA, and Sean's been involved. There's Kevin, the president, and Tony from the Education Committee at the Guild of Bricklayers. But anybody else out there, so people like Eve from the ABC, and if there are others, I know I've got Chris Simpson from the CITB in the last couple of days talking to me about the future of the conference. Perhaps we can put a little working group together and maybe have a meeting later to look at, in terms of educating the industry and key messages like the things that Alan's been talking about this morning, as well as what the awarding bodies have been talking about this morning. How we're continuing to get the tutors involved and keep that message flow between those that have got the message and those that need it, I guess. So again, when we send the presentations out later on, again, if I put my email on that, and if there are people that want to be involved in shaping that in the future, we'll be pleased to hear from you.
Can I just say thank you, and Terry, well, everyone for your input in the I say it's unusual, and I think it's going well. We'll get more feedback, and we'll just carry on from this. And what Julian said about the working group, yeah, that'd be a good thing to move forward to. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, hopefully we in the future may move back to the situation where we can actually see each other and speak to each other. So I think obviously one of the things that the conference has always been really good for, it's been an opportunity and a platform for people to be able to get together and actually talk about their individual problems and their individual concerns, and to share good practice. And it's been such a magnificent vehicle for providing that sort of information in the past, and obviously it's great. It's fantastic that we've managed to get the conference together, and I think there's a great deal of thanks need to go out to the people who've done all the work to put it where it is, in this way, electronically. Historic event, having the first online conference, but there is definitely that little thing missing, which is personal contact, and I think probably we look forward to the time when we can all get back to that and enjoy each other's company again.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tony. I know when I first started coming to the conferences, a big part of it for me was around the networking. The content's great, but you always come from a college or a training provider where you think you've got loads of problems, you think that your manager's telling you things that are a load of rhubarb, and then you go away and speak to colleagues and kind of you're able to put a perspective around that. One of the things that we was hoping to do following today's conference was to put on some workshops. And I think the Guild have a meeting at the end of this month, and we'll probably look to put on some workshops around the subjects that we've discussed this morning. So hopefully that might have a little bit more of a coffee morning feel about it, where we can network and have a chat and kind of discuss the problems. So for colleagues in colleges, again, a little bit more support, kind of providing that network where you can discuss your issues. Kevin mentioned the competitions earlier on as well, and I have contacted the colleges in our area, and what we're looking at doing is a competition where the competitors will work in their own colleges. What we're doing is just ironing out the way that they're going to be marked. We are confident that there will be a competition held this year, so there isn't a break in the continuity of the competitions as well. I think Kevin will probably pick that up as well in the meeting at the end of the month. And just before I do finish, thank you very much to the NOCN team for providing the platform. I know when me and Terry were discussing it, one of the concerns we had was kind of all the things that we're using every day, from Skype to Zoom and Teams. What was going to have the power to enable us all to get together this morning? And apart from the fact I struggle. I've got a computer set up here, and this is the only thing I've got volume on. I've sound on the others. For some reason, the sound hasn't come through. And perhaps again, in kind of looking at future working together, this kind of platform, they're the kind of things that we're laying out. But thank you to the NOCN team this morning for enabling this conference to go ahead. It's been brilliant. Thank you.